Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and hi if you're new here, I'm Jade, and yeah, it is time for May's reading wrap up. This is my first time filming, trying to do it, with the whole blurred background. I don't usually film like that, and I feel like if I wanted like my TBR card or something in it, it wouldn't be that useful. But we're gonna try it today. If you hate it, let me know, I'll go back. I won't do this again, but I thought I'd give it a go, because I feel like most YouTubers I watch do it, and I kind of like it. I don't know why I didn't think of just doing it before, but I just did. Also got a slightly different angle. Again, if you hate it, let me know. Sorry, I just got a phone call from one of my clients, and I was like, oh my god, trying to answer it with this microphone plugged in and stuff. It was very confusing. But anyway, sorry if the angle has changed slightly or anything. But let's get back into it. So overall, I think quite a good month. I feel like maybe collectively I have some weaker ones, but I also have a book which I think might be my book of the year. But anyway, let's start in the order I read them, because I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I should group them into genres in case people are only interested in one, but then I feel like I will compare them too much right in that moment, and I kind of like revisiting what I read in order and why I read it in that order, if that makes sense. So, the first book I read was Sally Rooney's Normal People. So yeah, she doesn't use quotation marks with speech, which is a little irritating, but I kind of just got used to it and then forgot about it. So it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, because I'd heard about that, but I still think I would rather have the quotation marks. I don't know why she chooses to write without them, but it's fine. So, Normal People follows the relationship of two people, Connell and Marianne, and we sort of follow their lives. They meet in high school. He's kind of popular, she's a bit of a loner, I guess, and they sort of hit it off and they have a bit of a thing for each other, but he's kind of ashamed of her, I guess you could say, which is just horrible. And that's how their sort of relationship starts, and she persuades him to maybe go to the same university as him, but he actually invites someone else to their school prom, and then she gets upset, and it kind of goes on from there. So that's kind of like their first meeting, and then it goes into their university years and things like that. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to give like the whole plot away, but essentially, like, in certain respects not a lot happens, but it's just about two people that know each other, that keep ending up back in each other's lives, and their sort of like complex relationship. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that it is just exploring the relationship of two people, and I was like weirdly invested in their relationship. To me, like, the fact that not tons of stuff was happening, and if I'm honest, if I knew them both in real life, I think they both really annoy me. But I was just so invested in our relationship. So I definitely thought I was going to give this a 5 star. I was like reading the whole thing through, but as you can probably tell at the bottom, I actually ended up giving it 4. And the reason for that is the ending. So I was literally reading the story and I was really into it. And then I was like turned and I was like, oh, there's nothing else. This is it. This is it. And therefore I don't know, I just felt a little bit lost at the end, because I felt like we didn't really get a proper conclusion for their relationship. And I get it, actually, because I mean, let's face it, anyone's relationship with someone is never really a cut and dry story. When your paths often keep crossing, and you come from the same small town, then yeah, I guess your story is never truly over. So I think that's why it ends like that. But I just wanted to know more and to know really what was going to happen with their relationship. It was just left very open ended. So that's why I gave it a 4, because for me, I just didn't get the closure that I seek, even though I do think it's more realistic, probably the ending. So I still love the book, and I gave it 4 stars. It was still a great read. And I think it's a show on the BBC, and I definitely want to check that out at some point. If you've seen it, let me know if it's any good, or whether to avoid it because it's terrible. Just let me know. Normal People was also what I picked for ugly cover last time I did my TBR jar choices, because oh, I can't do it that close. Hang on, let me move with it. Can you see? It's like people in a sardine can. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Okay, next up was a fun romance called Last Night Was Fun by Holly Michelle. And as you can probably tell, because I gave it 4.5 stars, I really enjoyed this one. So this is an ARC copy. It actually comes out sometime this month. I will write the date on because I can't remember it offhand right now. I want to say it's later this month. But yeah, ARC copy, so I wanted to read it for the author before it was released, and I just thought it was great fun. In this story, our main female character, Emmy, she gets a text message from a random number, and it's like mistaken identity. Some girl has given this guy a number in a bar to get rid of him and clearly made it up, and it just happens to be Emmy's number. Little does she know, the person that she is now texting and gains quite a connection with is actually her rival from work, who they're up against like each other for promotion, and they don't really get on. And so they have this kind of like secret relationship. They don't know it's with each other. And yeah, you see that they're actually like really compatible out of work. I'm not going to say too much more about the plot because I don't want to give it away, but it's obviously like kind of, I guess it's kind of enemies to lovers. It's sort of definitely rivals to lovers. It's got a bit of that going on. It's very cheesy, I will say. If you don't like your romances too cheesy, you're probably not going to like this one. But for me, it was like cheese perfection. The main reason is it is literally the embodiment of a sort of 90s, early noughties rom-com, and that was like my favorite back when I was, you know, a sort of child, early teenager. They were just like my favorite. And so for me, it was kind of nostalgic. It was like a book version of those. And therefore, I really, really loved it. It has a lot of the cliches in there. I think it has Kissing in the Rain from memory. It has a lot, okay? But yeah, cheesy, but worth it in my opinion if you like your romances, especially if you don't mind them being very cheesy. So yeah, I give it 4.5 stars. The only reason I wouldn't rate it 5 is because you do have to suspend your disbelief reading this, which obviously when it comes to a cliche romance, that's kind of expected. But the fact that they didn't realize they were speaking to each other was a little bit too far for me. I still overall love the book, but there were moments where they were having like text conversations, and I was like, when they were telling each other about their day, I was like, why wouldn't you have mentioned that big significant thing that happened when they both were together, which would have given it away, obviously, who they were, and they would have realized earlier. But how long it went on for without mentioning these big moments in their days that would have made them realize just seemed a bit unrealistic. Look past that, and it's a great book. So definitely one for those romance lovers out there. And then next we have The House in the Cerulean Sea, which is another one the TBR jar picked, and I have to say I absolutely adored this one, as you can probably tell by the 5-star rating. So in this book we follow Linus. He is a caseworker for like the Department of Magical Youth or something, I think it's called, and he gets assigned to this house, which is on an island in the Cerulean Sea. The Cerulean Sea is cerulean colour of Cerulean. I don't think that's the name of the sea. And Linus is a little bit of like, I guess like a loner. He just works and everything, and they decide to send him on this sort of like top secret job, which is kind of like confidential. So even like most of his colleagues don't know where he's gone, and he's called from up top in the department, and sent there because they trust him to have like a very neutral opinion because he's very dedicated to his work. And he ends up getting assigned to this house, which houses some kind of unusual children. Like one's like meant to be the Antichrist, and they are all just have like very special powers and are kind of suggested they're always going to be dangerous. They are looked after by a guy called Arthur, and Linus has been sent there to kind of assess whether it's safe, whether Arthur's looking after them properly, and whether, you know, he thinks it's a good sort of orphanage. And yeah, it's a really cute story in the end. It's kind of about Linus and whether he sticks to his whole following the rules kind of persona, or whether he breaks it to kind of follow his heart. I think that's the best way I can say. I really love seeing Linus grow as a character. I think all the characters have their own little charm, and I just think it's great. Okay, next I read another arc that I was sent kindly by an author. It was an ebook, so I will put the cover up on the screen. So this one is Feathers of Ash and Hope, which is from the Flameborn series, book number 1. That actually comes out on June 6th. So I think this video will be up just before it comes out. But yeah, it was due for June 6th, so unless that's changed, I'm pretty sure that's when it was due out, and it's by KJ Altair. As you can see, I have given it 3 stars, and it's not because I disliked it, I was never bored. It's actually really, really fast-paced. So if you're someone that finds that you find anything slow-paced really bored, you might really like this one. But for me, it was just a little bit too fast in that I didn't get to know the side characters very well as a result, and I kind of just wanted to know them more. And I had a few other minor issues with the book, which I'll talk about, but let me just summarize the plot for you. So this book follows a girl called Ara, and she wants to be a sky rider. She actually disguises herself as a boy to join the sort of like military application to be a skyrider, see if she bonds with a bird, because she doesn't want her family knowing she's going there because she knows they won't approve. So she goes in under this false identity. We learn that she kind of is cursed, and she thinks if she can bond with a bird, that it will hopefully fix and save her and people she knows from this curse that she's apparently got. So she enrolls, she meets her love interest, Tate, who is like in the leadership team there. And, it sort of plays out through there about her time there and whether she ends up getting to bond with a bird or not. And, different things in between, which I won't give the whole plot away. So if you couldn't tell from my description, it is definitely very influenced by Fourth Wing. For me, this is a pro and a con. I do kind of wish that it deviated a little bit more. But if you really like Fourth Wing, it's like a different version. It has its own unique parts for sure. Like it has the fact that the main character's gone in there disguised as a boy. That is definitely an aspect of it. We've got this whole curse thing looming over her. So that's different. Obviously, they bond with birds instead of dragons. It's a slightly different world, but obviously she does fall for someone who is in her leadership. She didn't know him before, so it's not like Violet and Xaden, where Violet's aware of Xaden and apparently he wants to kill her. It's nothing like that. Like, they don't know each other. But, it definitely follows a similar thing. There's definitely a mention of a parapet and things like that. So for me, it was a little bit too borrowing from Fourth Wing, but I do appreciate that it kind of deviated off its own thing. And I think the more you get into the book, the more it deviates from the Fourth Wing plot. So my main issue with it was there was quite a few mistakes. Now, obviously, I am reading an arc. It could be fixed by the time the final version is released, but that is super soon. And because I've only read it recently, I don't know if they're going to be fixed. So for me, the writing was a little bit clumsy and basic. It is from a dual point of view, so that's another difference, which I do actually really like about this book. I love that we got to see Tate is our main character's name. I love that we got to see Tate's perspective and Ara's perspective. I love that. But I do think the writing is a little bit clumsy at times. There are a few mistakes. There was a chapter where the wrong point of view was put there, and I suddenly realized it was definitely from the other character. And there was just some like little mistakes and a lot of repeated words, like a lot. So like I said, these could be changed, but for me, the writing needs more refining until I really think it should be released. But that being said, as I said, it's still got a really good foundation. This is from an indie author publishing independently, from what I gather. So I think as like an attempt at a first novel, it's really good. And I think if you love things that are fast paced and are never slow, and if you're not that bothered about getting to know the side characters in like depth, I think you might really like this. So yeah. Okay, we've got there. I think this is my book of the year so far. Obviously, it's only June, and maybe I will find one I like even more. But we've had some good releases this year. We've had Onyx Storm and everything in the romancy genre. But for me, I just think this is a little more unique, and therefore I think that's why I love it so much. So if you like your romancy, you've probably seen Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry around and mentioned quite a lot. And if you haven't read it yet, and you do usually like your romancy, and you want something a little bit different, so, not like the stereotypical, like, I guess, riding dragons and stuff. This starts with an arranged marriage, okay? So it's a little bit different. It's also a bit more of a slow burn, which is something I think I love about it. But anyway, in this book, we follow Odessa, who is Princess of Quentis, and it starts on the morning that her sister May should be meeting the prince she's betrothed to marry. So Odessa's sister, May, is meant to marry the Prince of Turan, and we find this out, and this is the day they're supposed to meet. So I don't think they're supposed to marry for another 6 months, but this is the day they're supposed to meet, and it all happens. Odessa, we find out, is a little bit not the stereotypical princess. She's often late. She often isn't as presentable as maybe a princess should be. There's something about her that reminds me of Merida from Disney, just because I think it's her free-spirited nature. I really love her as a female main character. I really love Odessa. So anyway, they get to this meeting with the prince, and there's a bit of a twist. The prince now wants to marry Odessa, and he wants to marry her today. So obviously this is not what they were expecting. We find out that May has actually been trained to be a spy for Quentis, entering the sort of province kingdom of Turan. Obviously Odessa isn't trained to do all of this stuff, so her father is trying to like quickly teach her some stuff and like ask her to spy for him, but obviously she just hasn't had the training, so she's not as well equipped as May would have been to do it. And obviously she doesn't want to marry some random guy that she's just met, even though she was betrothed to another. I won't give too much about that away. You can read that. And then obviously the book is her learning to navigate this new life in new lands, which we find out is actually quite dangerous. It has lots of dangerous creatures and it's a bit crazy. And yeah, and then obviously navigating a new marriage. There's a lot to it, but I know some people think it's a little slow moving, but for me, I think I like the fact that it's a bit of a slow burn. We've seen the characters grow and change and things develop. Like I personally, that's one of the things I loved about it. And I'm also doing a reading viral books vlog that will be up soon. And this does feature in it. So I've kind of given away that I really love this book, obviously, but I will talk about it a little bit in there too. But yeah, I just have to say, if you love romantasy, please give this one a try. Maybe it's not your cup of tea, because I know some people have said for them it moves too slow, but for me, it's perfect. To me, it doesn't feel slow at all. It's a slow burn, but it doesn't feel slow for me, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. Just read it, honestly. And obviously, I have rated this 5 stars, and I've already said it's like my favorite of the year, and I've rated quite a lot of 5 stars, but that usually means I just love the book and I would definitely read it again at some point. This is one that I would say I'd give 6 stars to if that was a thing. But yeah, I like to be more generous with my reviews, because if I really, really enjoyed something, I'd read it again. Why is it not a 5 star? But this is above that. Okay, like I love this one. And here we are with my next one, which was a 5-letter word for love by Amy James. If you've watched my TBR videos, you will see that this often comes up. And so I did finally pick it on my TBR this time. I think it was Pink Book was the prompt. I can't remember, I think. But anyway, I did enjoy reading this, but it was definitely a little cliche, which sounds bad because I know I said the other one was cliche, but this was different. So let me explain the plot. So our main character, M, it's weird because the other one's called Emmy in the other one. M's on a Wordle streak, so she plays that like game, hence the title's written in like a, in the letter blocks. And so she plays Wordle and she's like got a really good streak going, and she ends up bonding with one of the people she works with. So she works at a mechanics as like a receptionist, and she ends up getting on really well with one of the mechanics who she thought was like kind of rude before, because they suddenly realize they both play Wordle and do the streak. However, she's always dreamt of like a bigger life than like this small town girl just working, and she has bigger dreams. She just doesn't really know what she wants. She then works as a volunteer for the local museum, and she also helps out some elderly neighbors and sort of gets paid doing that. And she just isn't sure, like she enjoys both, but then she gets the chance and thinks, oh, you know what, I'm going to apply for like some museum positions in like top museums. And she ends up going to New York, where she starts working this kind of like internship thing for a top museum. However, she has to decide, what matters more to her, whether it is this whole career that she has dreamt up, or whether she actually misses a lot in the small town and what she was doing before. So that's kind of the story. So it's definitely a very cute, easy read. If you like your romances, I definitely don't think this is a bad book to pick up. I think it was good. The only reason I've given it 3 stars really is I didn't fully connect to the characters. I found her a little bit annoying at first. She did get better as the book went on, but I found Emma a little bit annoying at first. She was kind of snobby with her opinion on people that don't go and get a career and are happy to work in like places like being a mechanic, for example. And then she also just had the worst friends from university that she'd text and they'd ignore her, and I just got annoyed with her. Like, why do you even bother with them? So that was annoying. And the Wordle thing kept coming up so much that it just felt maybe a little bit too much for me. But overall, I did really like it. Like, I just don't think it's anything overly memorable, but still a cute, easy read if you like your romances, for sure. Okay, and then we arrive at my first thriller for the month. Those of you that have watched my videos before know that I mainly read a mix of romance, fantasy, and thrillers, but I can change it up a little bit here and there. So yeah, my first thriller of the month. I feel like I read a lot more thrillers in the winter. They're just more vibey, but this was actually the book choice for my in-person book club. It was my first time actually trying a Charlie Donlea book. I'd seen the author's name everywhere, but never tried one, and they picked 20 years later. So in this book, we have 2 main characters. We have Avery Mason, who is like a kind of TV journalist, and then we have Walt Jenkins, who is an ex-detective. Basically, this new technology allows people to test old remains and get more like accurate DNA results, etc. And they find the DNA of this person who passed away in the Twin Towers. So 20 years later, it refers to the fact that it's pretty much set 20 years after the Twin Tower disaster. And the finding of this DNA kind of leads to the re-examining of an old murder case. So our main characters, we kind of see them separately at the beginning, and then all of a sudden their paths cross because they both get involved in investigating this case. Avery, being a TV journalist, wants to do it for the show to make it like a big thing. She's got a lot to prove. She's only just taken over the show. And then Walt Jenkins was the detective originally from the case. He's now retired, but he's asked to return to look at it because they know that Avery is going to be looking at it as well. I won't say any more than that. There is a lot of sort of subplots, hidden twists and things like that around. There's a lot of mystery around Avery and her family. It's got a little bit of a romance subplot there too. But yeah, for me, the reason I've given it 3.75 is I loved the ending of the book, but I did find it super slow to start. I think because we follow the characters quite separately in their lives, and I wasn't really sure where we were getting at with the beginning of the book. And then I just found it a lot more interesting once our main characters had actually met each other and what would happen, with having like a bit of a romance subplot and just other factors in there. I just kind of liked the complications that were added once the characters actually met, because I feel like we could have cut off a lot of that bit at the beginning and the story would have still been told the same way and still made as much sense and still been as good, kind of just more like into the story. And I think I would have liked a more punchy beginning. But yeah, I'd say the first quarter of the book I found a bit slow and boring. Then I would say the next sort of like couple of quarters of the book I found good. And then the last quarter, I was addicted, like I can put it down. So if you like your thrillers, I definitely recommend this one. Just be prepared that it might be a little bit of a slow start, but I do think the ending makes it worth it. It's a really good, strong ending. I really enjoyed it. I would have liked a little bit more detail maybe at the end about things and things that get revealed. I can't say too much without spoilers, but yeah, I feel like the beginning of the book should have been cut out and we should have had a little bit more at the end. I still really enjoyed it, and I definitely will have to pick up another Charlie Donlea book to try, because I know in a lot of the reviews I was reading on this after I read it that this one seems to be one of the more like least popular with some of the readers. So I definitely need to try another. But yeah, overall I recommend. So then I picked up another arc, which is The Library at Hellebore by Cassandra Khaw. This comes out in July. I can't remember the date, but I will put it on screen if I remember, or in the description. I was really excited to read this one. It was described as like dark academia, horror, fantasy. Although I read a lot of thrillers, I wouldn't say horror is something I really read much before. I've definitely read a lot of like horror short stories in my time, like Edgar Allan Poe stuff as well, and just other little stories. But I don't feel like, especially with more modern novels, I've never really sat there and read like a whole horror novel. I mean, some old ones, but nothing, like anything that I could compare to this. So I'm not an expert in these genres, especially as a mix. But I would say for me, the fantasy was a little lacking. I feel like it just got thrown in with the term fantasy because we have basically like monsters in the book, I guess you can say. And then the dark academia thing, I'm like, well, it's set in a school, so I guess that's why I got that. But I definitely think it leans more towards the horror genre. Not that I'm an expert with that. So what happens is there is a girl, our female main character, Alessa Lee. She is kidnapped essentially and sent to this school called Hellebore. We don't really know a lot about it apart from there's clearly a lot of murder. It starts in a very strong way, I will say. Like, I really enjoyed the first little bit. We find out that Alessa has killed her roommate. And I was like, oh, we're right into the action. Now, the book does jump back and forth in time. And basically what we learn throughout the book is that people who go to this school / are made to go to the school, they all possess some kind of like magic special power. They're all kind of like internal monsters somehow. And they're told that if they get through this school that they will graduate and go on to live a normal life. But then we kind of find out this is all a lie and the faculty members actually eat them. And then this book kind of follows a group of students that have hidden out in a library on this sort of like final day where everyone's looking to kill them. So this book does jump in a timeline a lot. So you have to kind of try and follow where you are. It does sort of tell you, but because it jumps around quite a lot, I did sometimes find me really having to think about, oh, did this happen before or after this moment that I've already read? I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing, but for me, maybe it stopped me getting as into the story of the characters. I don't know. So this has a super solid writing, I will say. Cassandra Khaw is clearly a really talented writer. And I think the way it's written is very clever. But for me, it needed more world building and more character depth. There is essentially a lot of murder in this book, but I kind of found myself not caring because I just didn't really care enough for any of the characters, not even really Alessa, our main female character. I just didn't. And I think I just didn't really care enough about the fates of the characters to really invest myself into the book. But however, as I said, I'm not an expert with like horror, and maybe that's more of a normal thing within that genre. I don't know. I feel like if you really like this kind of thing and you don't mind having, quite frankly, a narrator that isn't reliable, Alessa, you don't really know what she's telling truth or if she's lying. If you like that kind of thing, I think you will really like this. I just don't have enough to really compare it to, and because I couldn't get fully invested in the characters, I just didn't feel I cared enough for this one. So that's why I gave it 3 stars for me. But I do think if this is more your usual genre, you might like it a lot more than I did. And I still wasn't bored. That's why I've given it 3 stars. Like, I still found it interesting. I just wasn't super invested. And then the final book I read this month was The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. I saw the movie of this years and years ago, and then I picked up the book years and years ago because of the movie. And it was in this buy one get one half price deal, if you can't tell. So I picked it up back then, and it sat there, and I was like, I don't think I've ever read this. So when I was going through my books the other day, sorting out stuff for my shelves, I was like, I don't think I've actually ever read this one. And then I just had the urge to pick it up at the end of this month because we've had a lot of storms, and it just kind of seemed fitting. So in this book, Arthur, who's kind of like a lawyer type, solicitor type thing, he gets summoned to this old lady's funeral and then gets tasked with like going to her house and sorting through the paperwork and things like that. But it becomes quite apparent quite quickly that not all is as it seems. He spots someone at the funeral who no one else could seem to see, and then he goes to the house and it seems to be haunted, and he keeps seeing this woman dressed in black. And then it kind of plays on from there. There's a bit of a legend to do with her about children. That's all I'm going to say. It's hard to say too much without giving it away, but basically it's about his time in the house, getting a little bit freaked out, and then leaving and being glad to be rid of it, and then what ensues in the future. It's quite a short novel, so it's quite an easy read, but I think it's good. I give it 3.5 stars because I don't think it's anything outstanding, but I do like the sort of little bit at the end that is kind, I wouldn't call it a full-on twist, but kind of. And yeah, I think I think it's well written. I think it's an interesting story, but it's nothing mind-blowing. So yeah, that is everything I read. A good mix of books, I feel. I think I definitely had collectively a lot lower ratings, but I did find Shield of Sparrows, which I loved, and I read, House on Cerulean Sea, which I also loved, and I generally did enjoy most of the books. Like, there was nothing I hated this month or anything like that. I just think there was a lot more mediocre stuff for me. But yeah, that is everything I read. And please stick around if you're interested more in Shield of Sparrows and also the other viral book that I'm going to compare it to. Also a romancy, by the way. So that's for romancy readers. I thought I would do 2 romances together. It made more sense. But yeah, please stick around, subscribe for that if you haven't already, if you like romancy. And I'll see you again real soon. Bye!